wonderful day, everyone. It's been great. I just want to thank our panelists, the audience, our participants for just a great interaction. It's true to the vision that we wanted to communicate to everyone, get everyone together. I also wanted to take this time to thank our sponsors, Palo Alto, Forescout, and Nozomi. We've worked with these companies. They've been incredibly helpful. We've been able to collaborate on projects around the world. And one of the things that's been, the most useful is our ability to partner with them being able to take the feedback from our clients, as well as our teams, kind of lessons learned from the field, integrated into both their product roadmaps, as well as their sort of delivery and supporting us. So wanted to get some thoughts from them and, kind of talk through what they've seen today and kind of get a better perspective of their view on the state of OT security. So I'll start with you, Chris, from Nozomi. Are there any takeaways from today that really hit you or resonated with you?
Yeah, several. First, thanks, Luis, for having us here and for the awesome sessions today. You guys did a wonderful job. I think for me, one of the, actually, I'll just highlight two takeaways that I thought were really impressive. First is Brian Singer, and when he was highlighting the high cost of inaction when it comes to cybersecurity. That's a lot higher than the cost of taking the wrong action. So doing nothing at all and pretending it's someone else's problem is a lot more expensive than investing now and doing something today, because later on, if a breach or an attack happens, you're going to really be happy that you have the tools in place to be able to handle that. The second one was Dale Peterson's stories, one of them on using the passive technologies in OT, and how that kind of led to the discovery that things are sort of insecure by design, and thus we should use consequence reduction as a goal. And I really feel strongly that that's key to being cyber resilient, is not thinking if we're hacked or attacked or when it's going to happen. We should wake up every day thinking that it's probably already happened. In fact, these major vendors are finding things that are 10 years old. We're still patching things like just a couple of weeks ago for vulnerabilities that have been around for 10 years. So we need to start planning on the fact that we've probably already been breached and we just haven't discovered it yet. So we need to be resilient and find ways to reduce those consequences. I think those are some key points. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Del, same question. Have you
seen? First of all, great job, Accenture team, for today's event. Really awesome stories. For me, I spent most of my time in the executive track, and a couple of times came up was the guidance on reducing the technology footprint. And this correlates with what I've been seeing as a big challenge in terms of the technology sprawl. So you need a perimeter firewall, OT firewall, IPS, sandbox, OT sensor. And going forward, you need 5G security, IoT, SD-WAN. So I think the operational challenge that comes with this is really surfacing. People don't want to repeat what they've done in IT and OT in terms of these point solutions being coupled up together. And at the end of the day, you're working with more vendors than you really want to. So they're really striving for this platform approach for OT, trying to avoid these pains that I mentioned. So some organizations are even striving for a homogeneous, as much as possible, approach between the IT enterprise tools and OT. So as Dale Peterson talked about, being able to use what's happening in IT as an auger for what's to come in OT. So it's not surprising, actually, but that did hit home in terms of where we are as a technology company.
Wow, that's a great point. So Brian, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Louis. Unlike my friend Dell here, I actually spent the time on the technical track. So my kind of big takeaway was Tony Sousa. One of the things he said to stop on was stop trying to be perfect, which really resonated for me, because I feel, especially if you're early on in your OT program, don't focus on trying to be perfect. Focus on speed, scaling, and operationalize those types of technologies and processes. Because when you're building a program and you're building new processes or you're deploying new technologies, you really need to focus on operationalization of those things to drive value. And I think when you're working at a lot of large enterprises in a variety of verticals, we heard people from pharma to utilities to rail. And when we work in these large companies that have large service territories, thousands of sites or facilities, that are very large and complex network topologies with different lines and that are doing critical things to operate. Doing that quickly, scaling that, and once again, to operationalize those and drive value, that's really, really key. And that's what we're seeing trend-wise as well.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Those were great. So do you guys have any accelerators that you're seeing in terms of successful projects across the industry? I'll start with you, Del, from Palo Alto.
Yeah, there's always people, process, technology kind of considerations. For me, out of all those three, it's always been the people. I'm talking about IT and OT being aligned at the highest level. We're talking COO holding hands with the CIO and CISO as part of a governance board. I'm talking about the board of directors being literate on the risks of OT. That's when project owners are held accountable, I think, by the leadership team. And that's when they're in sync in terms of viewing OT security as critical part of the business, right? Having this one common mission across the board.
That's great. I guess, Brian, I'll go back to you. Do you have any thoughts on that? Things you're seeing that accelerate?
Yeah, I mean, we can't disagree with Dell around the people. I think another kind of talk track, Darren, who moved from the power vertical to the rail vertical, had a lot of experience and took his experiences to a whole other vertical. I think if you're an asset owner, getting the right people if you can find people with OT experience in your vertical, great. If you can't, try to find OT folks in similar verticals or like verticals that can help with people, absolutely. But another huge thing is that I'm seeing accelerate things is really those companies who have mature IT security practices. We talked about, or I heard earlier, most everyone for the last decade or so have really focused on building their IT security practice and program. And where I see people really accelerate their OT program is if you have a mature SOC or IR process on the IT side, not saying that in OT it's exactly the same, but the overall mission and end goals and strategies are very similar. And now then what you can do, start with that as a framework and then adapt it to OT and kind of what your goals and objectives are for really building your OT program.
Thank you. Chris?
I think the biggest accelerant that I'm seeing personally is sort of something that has been hit on several times today, which is not getting bogged down in the terms. IT, OT, IIoT, IoT, it's all just technology, and trying to create buckets and put them in different buckets and keep them separated sort of poses different types of challenges later, and a more holistic approach from the top down, sort of hitting on what both Del and Brian just brought up is going to be key to making sure that we have the right attention and resources applied across the entire estate. So in some parts of our enterprise, we may have one technology, in another part, we have another. It's all going to rely on each other to operate as a whole. So we need to treat it as part of the business instead of, some of them are maybe a stepchild that we don't want to take care of as much because of the risk that it brings. And yet at the end of the day, we really have to have that here. So we have to treat these technologies as an integral part of the enterprise and not, I think, try to isolate them with air gaps and things like that are sort of mythical, or think that we have, because we put a label on one technology, now we have this silver bullet that might apply. So being able to get across all the technologies with tools and techniques and people and processes and stuff that bring it all together, I think is going to be a key to success.
That's great. So I'll give you guys the last point on stop, start, continue. So Scott, I'll start with you in terms of stop, start, continue.
Yes, I know we want to say bold statements here at this conference with Accenture. This is something that I've been saying back in the days when I led a security team for asset owners, but stop saying no. If you're in the OT security space, our job is to enable the business, not say no. And so stop saying no and stop allowing others to influence you to accept no. So whether it's an OEM saying, no, I think Dale talked about this, no, you can't turn on a spam port, that's going to affect reliability and availability. Stop saying no and say, well, if you're not going to allow me to do that, are you going to accept the risk if my plant goes down, and are you accepting that cyber risk? You need to push back, stop accepting no, stop saying no. Continue. We have to continue applying kind of the security principles that we've been doing for a decade in IT into OT. Dale also hit on this. We're seeing principles like comply to connect and automated response and dynamic segmentation really being applying in ICS and OT. And lastly, start. Let's move beyond deep packet inspection and safe active probing. I mean, obviously, Forescout's one of those vendors who has tools that can do that, and they're great. And we're not saying don't do that. What we're saying is there's also other methods beyond passive monitoring and safe active probing in OT that have to be rolled out to achieve completeness and bring in context. So thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Chris, I'll give you a chance.
Sure. I'm going to take a slightly different order. Start, stop, and continue, if that's okay.
Sure.
So start, being very proactive, thinking about our supply chain risks that have just been exposed. Start acting as if you've been breached. You just haven't figured out from where yet or where it is. So be very suspicious of everything that is around you. You don't have to necessarily trust things just because someone else that you trust put it there. So we need to be more proactive and move towards like a zero trust and reduce the blast radius of being attacked or the impact of that attack. And then to stop believing in myths, air gaps, cybersecurity, silver bullets, that any one of our many practices are going to save the day. Like, I don't need that piece because I have this piece. That just doesn't work. We need all of it. It's a holistic, full-blown top to bottom approach. Our adversaries are going to find the weakest link, and whichever piece we think is important today is the one that they will leverage tomorrow. So we have to be aware of everything that's around us and everything that is in this environment, from the assets to the networks, how they operate, what they do, the impact to the physical world, whether it's on the industrial side or whatever. So that's stop believing in those myths and start putting it all together in one technology bucket, I would say, and then continue moving forward towards a state of cyber resiliency. It's not about being perfect, as Brian brought up, just reiterated throughout the day. It's about being resilient. We're not going to be perfect. We're in a constant state of recovery. Any large IT SOC is going to admit that there's an incident every single day. They're always fixing something. That border and that wall is never high enough. So plan on a breach and start thinking that wall may not be enough tomorrow, or that they were already here. So build that security today and make sure you're monitoring, make sure you're aware of everything, every asset you have, the expected configuration of them, and how they should operate and what part they play in the environment.
Thank you. Del?
Yeah, going back to my theme of people, I think for IT and OT, stop assuming the worst out of your counterpart. So everybody's there to really make a difference, and they're not there to try to make your life hard. So again, going back to the common mission, that really needs to unify. So that's the first thing to stop. For continuing, it's really related to that. It's continuing the outreach. Do the lunch and learns, the joint cyber simulations, the cross-pollination of talent. That will only strengthen your organization. And start adopting a technology approach, focusing on the few technologies that can really hit on the majority of the required capabilities while having the openness to work with other technologies. That will not only reduce your OpEx, but also foster a more collaborative environment for IT and OT. That's
great. You guys, I know, are partnered closely with a lot of different clients, and you're really close to this. So I appreciate your insights. It's been very helpful. So it's been a great discussion. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it. See you guys.